Good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us on the Customer Contact Centre webinar hosted by Differentia Consulting. In the next 45 minutes or so, we will be showing you how you can measure and prioritise each and every customer experience within your call centre. I will just run through the agenda for today. Rick Wild will present an introduction on the Qlik Analytics platform. This will then be followed by Peter Crayford, who will run through CEM to 1, the contact centre objectives, the KPI opportunity, and the DEM to 1 service level score. This will then be followed by a demo of the Qlik Analytics platform and a discussion on the two-step approach. Finally, after the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. We will also be recording and sharing the webinar with you for further reference if needed. That's all for now, and I hope you enjoy the webinar. I will now hand over to Rick. Thank you.
So good morning everybody. These days everybody is connected the whole time and everything is generating data. We have very high expectations of the systems that we interact with, and especially because we need very simple user interfaces we've become used to, very simple user interfaces to really quite complicated pieces of technology. Let's take, for example, the Google Maps. It's really clever stuff going on behind the scenes, but the interface is so easy that we really rarely think about it. Within businesses, the presence of data doesn't always lead to good analysis and good information. In general, people are used to systems that provide reporting, starting from hindsight, but really where we want to be working is up here in the Foresight area so that we know what's happening while there's time to do something about it. We could characterize this as information, descriptive reporting, the stuff that we're all used to. Following on to what went wrong, what happened, how can we improve, let's increase the good and decrease the bad. And these days we're now thinking about what happens, what should we do, optimized outcomes, and so on. The Qlik Analytic platform covers all of these steps in the journey, from standard reporting, even to printed on paper, into the whole predictive area of forecasting behaviour. So what's special about the Qlik Analytic platform? Well, at the heart of it, or underpinning the whole business, the associative in-memory data engine provides a coherent view of data with complex relationships. Typically in a call center, your customer will have many motivations and your data will have many touch points. The Qlik Associative Data Engine allows every piece of information to be related to every other piece of information in an unambiguous and coherent way, which means that everything can be interactive and everything can be interrelated. On top of that platform, Qlik provide two distinct clients. The Qlik View, that many of you will know and love, is particularly optimized for high functionality analytic applications, generally presented to information consumers who will then interact with the system as it stands. The other client, Qlik Sense, is optimized for a deeper analysis, and especially in the realms of self-service and analytics. Now, unlike visualization tools, the Qlik Sense platform works on the very same coherent and associated data model as the Qlik View platform. Once you export data from your systems into, for example, Excel or visualization tools, you lose control and governance, you lose lineage and auditability. With the Qlik Analytic platform, that is not the case. You can allow people who need to analyze and deep dive into the data freedom, which is controlled to a very granular extent, while still having the freedom to roam, you retain the lineage, the governance, and the auditability of the data. This means that you don't run the risk of breaking a single version of the truth, and at the same time you have up to date, beautiful, animated, and competent visualizations. Plus, because the platform is open, compliant, and equipped with a whole set of APIs, if you have specialist visualizations that you require, it's very easy to plug in new objects to the Qlik platform. So we have a combination of the associative experience for a coherent single version of the truth. We have on-the-fly aggregation so that you don't need to bother with pre-building OLAP cubes. We have the selection engine, which allows you to compare different sets of data within the data set. And on top of all that, we have bring your own visualizations. I'm very pleased to announce that as of yesterday, Qlik Sense Enterprise 2.0 is available. If anybody would like to know more about that, then please ask the question. I'd be delighted to go into it in great depth. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Peter, who will get into the meat of this morning's presentation.
Thank you very much, Rick. So yes, this is Peter Crayford. This is talking very much focused around the contact center angle of today's presentation, and around keeping your engaged customers and reconnecting with your disengaged customers with a single engagement score. So if there's any questions as we go through the session, then feel free to pop that into the little chat box. Then we can answer those, because there's some points as we go through that it would be helpful if that's all clear and makes sense then before we actually get into the demonstration side. So we want to make this quite an interactive session if possible. So when we talk about customers, customer experience and customer journeys, what we're really trying to understand is obviously this end-to-end customer journey and the various interactions and transactions that happen to that customer over time. So obviously we're trying to understand those magic and miserable moments of the customer experience, because by understanding those, we can then, which is kind of the new angle of what we're talking about here, is not only understand these interactional experiences and what it means, but by understanding the end-to-end picture of that, we can then understand kind of basically if their customers is more likely to be loving the brand or having an awful sort of hating the brand type situation by the end of that journey. So, you know, it says there, the end-to-end customer journey and the customer's ultimate outcome from that journey. So we're tying two things together. So when we talk about, we're very much focusing about contact center in this presentation, but we can talk about multi-channel because of the whole approach works in the same way. So here we've got examples of a contact center, then retail, then online, and then kind of repeated again over a journey that a customer might experience. And what the DM approach does is, if we focus on the contact center here, is it can take up to, and it can be more, but I don't think it's more generally than 9 sort of key data attributes or key KPIs. And then we mush all those together to then create a single DEM score for each customer, for each and every journey. So we have that complete holistic view of what's going on. So not only can we do that in the contact center for each of that, but we can also do that for retail, where we can take probably around 6 KPIs and some data points, pull them together into one DM score. And then obviously online, we have some more data points we want to look at. And then where the clever bit is we can basically weave all those individual customer scores together to create one single outcome understanding. So we get that single DM KPI to measure customer outcomes. So if we just go back to that first bit again, if there's any questions. So it's taking things, if we talk about contact centers, you've got average handling times, you've got a service level scores, you've got call lengths, you've got abandon rates, you've got all of these things which are normally kind of kept separately. So we can take the key data attributes of those, merge them together into one score, and then that is what we're then tracking over time. So hopefully that makes sense. So why is that important? So obviously what we're trying to do now is the strategy changes to what the focus is. So instead of it being what the business is trying to achieve, so we want to get call volumes down, or we're trying to get costs down, or we're trying to get churn down, or whatever it is we're trying to achieve, then they're very business centric. So again, with this approach, we can take much more of a customer approach to it, which is keeping your engaged customers and reconnecting with your disengaged customers, and all of those metrics and approach all aligns to that strategy. And why that's important is because when you then look at your engaged to disengaged customers, your engaged customers have a 9 times higher net promoter score, and they have a 7 times higher response rate across sell-upsell campaigns. Compared to the disengaged customer segment, they have a 10 times higher churn likelihood and a 5 times higher cost to serve. So financially and an ROI point of view, it's a complete no-brainer. So when we think about contact centers, they generally, most contact centers have the same sort of principles they're trying to achieve, which is obviously they're trying to do more of meeting customer goals, solving customer issues, adding value to the interaction for the customer as well as for the business, first contact resolution, closed loop contact, and obviously trying to measure and manage that end-to-end customer experience, with the ultimate outcome trying to obviously exceed expectations where possible, surprise and delighting the customer, and then with the ultimate outcome, which is obviously trying to help the customer love the brand. But in today's world, for whatever reason, that's not always possible to deliver those outcomes all the time. So the reality is there's quite a few areas of the business that contact centers tend to focus on, which is around reducing and optimizing costs, reducing repeat calls, improving first contact resolution, reducing long calls, reducing transfers, improving efficiency and effectiveness at an agent level and at business level, developing people skills, fixing processes and systems, improving sales conversions, and reducing churn. And what you'll see in the demo is you'll see how you can use the Qlik environment using this methodology to actually deliver all of those parts that are there. So it makes it much, much easier to get hold of that information and how you then manage it from a customer point of view, and then understanding the impact of those experiences on the customer themselves. And then ultimately what we're trying to do from a promotional point of view is obviously reduce detractors if you're a net promoter type business, and obviously trying to also reduce frontline attrition in staff, because we know if we have happy staff, we get happier customers. So just to get across the main point of the shared challenge and the opportunity with today's KPIs and what we're talking about here with the GEM KPI, is if we take this particular example here, where we've got a customer experience coming down the left-hand side, you can see day 1, day 2, day 7, and then the types of issues that customer, this is that an individual customer over time has had and has called in about into the contact center. And then you can see across the top, you can see a number of different sort of data points, but often they become KPIs in their own right. So you've got queue minutes, agent talk minutes, wrap minutes, so time after the call for the agent to close the call down, net promoter score, hold time, abandon count, and transfer count. So what often happens, we'll have these individual KPIs. Sometimes you've got some companies that might do an average handling time, where you're adding 2 or 3 of those together, or a service level score, again merging a couple of those together. But what we're interested here is, if you look down the orange circles with the white writing in, is that's indicating how many minutes that this customer has been on that queuing for, talking to an agent for, or the net promoter score, or the whole time. So if you take the queue column first, where that's above over about 20 minutes worth of queue time for that customer over that time period, what would normally happen in a contact center is that number would then be merged with the other 50,000, 100,000, million customers who've called that month and averaged out. So for this customer, it's over 20 minutes worth of queue time, but if you do that with everybody else, and average it out, you're only at like 2.5 minutes worth of average queue time. So again, averaging this data, it just misses the end-to-end customer journey, and therein lies the opportunity. So what we really should be trying to understand is kind of moving away from the siloed approach of these kind of disparate KPIs to where we can link all that end-to-end journey together for every single customer and for every single call. Now, obviously, that's making the assumption that when a customer comes in from the IVR onto the ACD, that we have an identifier that identifies that customer each time they call in, or at least the majority, say 85–90% of inbound calls are identified. So again, for telecoms companies, that's pretty straightforward. But if you don't have that sort of setup where you know the mobile numbers, then normally most IVRs would have a facility to enter in your account number. So you can then say, could you identify yourself? You enter your account number, that's tracked, and that can be handed over to the data so we can allocate all the interactions together. So what we're going to focus on a lot in the presentation and the demo is kind of the green slice that you can see at the top there. So this is kind of the single, if that was a single one-time call, then we'll pick up on that for some call reason analysis we'll do in the demo. But the red area is then really looking at where there's these repeating interactions, what's going on, which customers are doing that, what are they actually calling us about, and what's the impact of the business of that. So again, we'll reference this kind of green stripe and the red stripe throughout the presentation. So again, when we think about how KPIs are measured and managed today in a contact center and in most channels, to be honest, the same principles apply. It's quite interesting when you actually look at the calculation. So I've just taken one in the bottom left-hand corner, which is for service level and average handling time. And the trick with that is both of them are divided by calls. So again, when you're thinking about what we're about to discuss here, when you divide by calls, you get one very average figure. When you divide by customers, you get a very different sort of figure, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So what we find is if we look at that green sliver of the single interaction customers to contact center, so we get 66%, so this is an average month, this is based on utility company. So 66% of customers then creating 40% of the call volumes, which then means you've got 34% of customers creating 60% of the multiple interactions. And when we talk about multiple interactions, what that means is if you are, as you can see in the bottom left-hand side there, A, which is the single, so it's a customer that's called up, had the interaction, and then finished the call and they haven't called back. B is where you've called up, you get transferred to another agent. C is where you've called up a number of times or more than once. And then D is where you've called up many times, and then you've also had transfer of call as well. So it's giving you kind of different views of how those numbers work. And why that becomes important to understand that is, as I said, if you look at the average handling time for calls between single and multi, because it's dividing by calls, is always 6 minutes. But as you can see on the average handling time divided by customer, your single call is still 6 minutes, as you'd expect. But your multi-step figure, so where you've got the repeat calls and the multi-transfers, you're now at 16 minutes worth of average handling time. So I think most contact centers would manage their call volumes differently if they could see that type of view of divided by customer and divided by call. If that was waiting, if a customer has been waiting for a long time already and had multiple interactions, you'd probably want to route them and manage them differently to a first-time caller. So again, it just gives you that different view of that. And we know from other work that we've done that, clearly just using this single view, then this leads to customer dissatisfaction and ultimately churn as well. So what can we do about it? So we talked about a number of different contact center KPIs. So we talked about call service levels, SDR, average handling time, call length, abandoned calls, hold time, agent-to-agent transfers. So here we've got 9 different separate KPIs. And what we're obviously wanting to do to get to the bottom of it is then to integrate those 9 KPIs into one DEM score. So we take a number of different customer attributes, data attributes, so like agent talk time, ring time, transfers, all of those sorts of bits of information, and then we create one single score per customer, which then can be allocated into one of those buckets, which is between the green buckets on the left-hand side and the red buckets on the right. So green is kind of your satisfactory, engaged customer view, and then the red is clearly your disengaged customer, which is where all your costs are and where your dissatisfaction and ultimately churn and lower net promoter scores are all hiding. And then what we do with that is it has the potential to give us 4 different views of outcomes. So we can report, and what you're going to see in the demonstration is predominantly around the customer view, but you're also going to see around the agent performance side of things, because what we're going to need to do now we've got a single score is integrate how we manage customers and that strategy, and then also how we measure and manage agents. So the 2 strategies come together in one solution. So there's basically 2 scores, DIM scores, to understand. There's the DIM-to-1 customer score. So again, we've just talked about those segments there. So green is good on the left and red is bad on the right. And what we do within this is, what is important to understand is if we take, say, 3 months worth of data, aggregated at a customer level of the score, and then compare that to the current 3 months, so we have a 3-month on 3-month view, we can then compare the increasing or decreasing score by customer and by customer segment. So again, as highlighted earlier, the benefit of doing this is clearly if somebody has a decreasing score over time, then they have obviously up to 5 times higher costs associated and up to a 10 times higher churn likelihood. But on the positive side is if they're kind of staying in the green or moving back to the green, then you get a 7 times higher response rate and up to 9 times higher net promoter compared to the disengaged customers. So again, giving you real transactional, countable insight into the experience and the outcome at the customer level. So this is fine when looking at customers and managing customers, but what you also then really need is a top-level score to manage contact centers, to manage teams, to manage maybe value segmentations, whatever it is you might want to manage at that holistic top level. So where we do that is we take the green bucket, which is the A bucket, we minus the B buckets, which are the red buckets, and divide by the C, which is the total. And then the value of then that creates a score, which you can then track per week, per month. And then what we already know is a 10% improvement in that score equates to a 30% reduction in costs, in obviously reducing those non-value add costs to customers. So obviously there's quite a bit of content we've just covered off there, but there is some more information if you want to go to dm-to1.com, and then that just gives you more. There's plenty of videos in there for you to listen to more around the missing 60% of interactions, that red chunk that I spoke about, around the cross-sell, upsell, and the reduction things that we're about to show in the demo, and also more about how that score is created. So what do we actually need data-wise, so from a contact center? So as the 90% of the majority of data here is coming from the ACD. So that's your Genesis, your Cisco, whatever type systems you might have, VIA systems you might have. And then, but the trick here is we're looking for the transactional raw data. So it depends if you store this or not. The demonstration you're about to see is based just on 2 months. So we can show you how much value you get within 2 months worth of data. But clearly, if you get up a year's worth of that data, then suddenly you can start to do some very interesting things to understand the ROI of churn, and you get some very impressive numbers that come out off the back of that. But as I say, ACD is the main data at the transactional level, with the ability to link the customer back to that data. And then any marketing profile data, so kind of we know what your price plan you're on, how long you've been a member, any of those sorts, or customer, any of that sort of information is good. Call recordings, really quite important. If you happen to do 100% call recordings, that can be quite cool, certainly if it's digital. because we can quite easily link that into the views that you'll see later on. Any text analytics that's done, notes that are taken, NPS, CSAT scores. Again, there's not too bulky any of that data, so it's all relatively easy to pull into the view to give you that further insight and deep dive into the data. And as managed just a second ago, that we can deliver a lot of value just with 2 months worth of that transactional data. But if you really want to get into the churn correlations and prove that part of the ROI, then really you need a minimum of 12 months, ideally sort of going up to 18 months worth of data. But I say a lot of value can deliver just with 2 months. And then for each month you deliver afterwards, then you're building up, obviously you get your 6-month view, your 9-month view, and then your 12-month view. So you build it up over time. Okay, so we're now just going to flick on questions. Maybe seem more clear at the moment. So just while we flick across, if there's any questions that have popped up, feel free to pop those into the chat window. So in here, and hopefully now you can see into the front of Qlik. And first of all, we're just going to show you the principles of how sort of the DM score works and how it integrates those KPIs together. So this isn't part of the delivery you would get, unless you particularly would want this. It's just to demonstrate the value of how the score is integrated. So we take, these are the 9 different boxes you see here, which represent the sort of 9 boxes that we talked about, the different sort of isolated KPIs. So we've kind of got our under 20-second call profile, average handling time, abandon rates, repeat call profiles, call length, hold time, agent transfers. And then over here, we've then got a quite interesting sort of fact over here. So we've got showing you the DEM segmentation here. So we've got our low, medium, high, and very high. And then what we're looking at here is the 60% of customers sit within the satisfactory engaged segment, and then 15% of customers are sitting within the red segment. And then this cost piece there is showing you how much cost is associated with the red disengaged segment. And then for this month of April, this is the DEM score of 45. And as I mentioned earlier, so for a 10% improvement in that score equates to a 30% cost reduction. And what you can see here also, which is I think is quite interesting, is that if you compare these 2 groups together, you've got 4 times more customers in the green segment, but actually they're creating the same amount of talk time that these customers are. So this small chunk of customers are creating the same amount of talk time as this big chunk. And then you can see from a ratio of agent transfers, hold durations, and queue time, it just goes off the scale to the impact of the experience that these people are having, which is why we need to address these group of individuals. So what I'd like to demonstrate really is if you kind of watch these various charts, as you can see from kind of we take the repeat call profile here, so you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 20 odd repeat calls, or your average handling time under 7 minutes, then going into 7 to 14 minutes, 14 to 27 minutes, and 27 plus minutes up here. If I select this green one here, you'll then see that how everything all focuses onto the left-hand side. So we can now really show you what a satisfactory customer experience looks like by all of these KPIs. But also where it gets a bit more scary is if I select the bottom bucket here, you can see how, you've got a chunk of customers here that have got, so 80% of customers have got an average handling time of over 27 minutes, or their total call length is over 29 minutes. We've got 50% of customers with over 11 minutes of hold time. So it just really, just by using these segments, you know that you're looking at your good and your bad experiences. Okay, so that sets the scene. So still clear on questions? And then we're now going to go into the deep dive. So what we're doing here is this is how we would then use an example of what we were talking about earlier on about finding where things are not going right and trying to find customers that are having certain experiences. So if we just talk through what the dashboard, you're looking at the dashboard. So each dimension that you're looking at, X and Y, you're looking at. So this is Q minutes on the left, whole duration this side, and then the size of the bubble dictates the how many minutes. So this is your customers in your welcome, grow, and keep. Then your low, medium, and high value customers, and then their experiences. Then over here is a little graphic to show you percentage of single call and 2+ interactions, DM segmentation, call reasons. So you can see in here is your billing and payments, down into escalation and kind of renewals and loyalty type things down here, and then number of repeat interactions. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to just select on the 57. So these are all the single contacts. And then what we're interested to find out is then we can go, right, well, I'm interested in the billing and payment. So we can then select the billing and payment. And then we can go in and go, right, well, actually, I'm interested all the billing and payment people that are in there that are probably not having a great experience. So I'm going to track these ones here. And now you can then see people in their welcome experience by their low, medium, and high value. And then you can just double click on the details down here. And then you can see your account number. Then you can see each call that they've made and interaction they've had. And then obviously it's all down as billing and payments. That's what you'd expect. And then it just allows you then to see which customers have been having, not a great experience, or have had long calls, long hold durations. So it just allows you to kind of zoom straight into the type of customers having certain types of interactions. So what we now want to do is look at the repeat side of things now. So if I just click back a couple of goes there. There we go. So here we want to look on the other side of life now. So we want to look at the multiple interactions. And then you can see that how your segmentation has changed there. And obviously, because we have multiple interactions, we're now less interested in the call reason in its own right, because obviously a single customer, when they're repeat calling, tend to have more than one reason for calling. So what we're going to focus on this time, by clicking on this box, it then blows the whole page up so you can see in a bit more detail. And as you come down these dots here, they're showing you 3, 4, and 5, and so on down here. So what we're just going to do is we're going to focus on this bottom corner. And then you can see down the bottom here, you've got people that have got, oops, is that R21? There's our person that's had 21 interactions with the contact center during April. Or you've got somebody here that's had 10. So again, we can focus in to these, obviously these customers here that are having a pretty nasty experience. And then we just minimize that back down again. And then we can see where they are in their life cycle. We can see the value segmentation of it. And we can see here, so this particular customer, or Mr. Account number 299, so he's had 86 minutes worth of queue minutes, 28 minutes of hold time, and 116 minutes of talk time in this period. So as you can imagine, he's probably not having a great experience. And then down here again, you can see all the information again. So the account numbers, the call reasons, and as you can see, if we roll down the page here, that you've got just a full list of just so many different sorts of interactions these customers are having. And then I think my favorite one, I think I'd like to just go back to, is if we focus in, just clear that, and go back to our Mr. 21, April, and we just go back and focus down into and find that customer who has the 21 interactions. There we go. So if we select him and then we minimize down again, you can see down here, so this is the same account number, all of his calls, and then you can basically watch his call reason change over time as he goes through that 21 connection. So again, call reason analysis in traditional senses wouldn't work for this person. It's only by understanding the customer over time And looking at this level, you start to understand that level of information. And then as we come across, you've got all the other bits of information you need. You've got start and finish time of each call.
Double click the start time then.
And then we've got the agent IDs.
Click the column heading.
Oh, the column heading, okay.
Just double click the column heading.
Okay. And then, as I was mentioning earlier on, you can then add in other bits of data into those. So if you had your CSAT or Net Promoter, you've got your call recordings or text analytics. Again, all of that can be brought into this view as well. So it really just gives you everything that you're trying to understand from a singular call reason or a multi-call reason point of view. So next step I just want to go into is the agent side. Actually, no, I just want to show from a cross-sell upsell point of view, because what you can just very simply do again here is you can go, right, I'm interested in all the customers that had a good experience that might be interested in cross-sell upsell activity. So clearly you wouldn't want to be interested in these people. You just want to go, right, so for April, just show me all the people that have had a satisfactory, good, positive experience, and then there's a list of your account numbers. So again, you can feed that into next best action type activity, decisioning machines, or however you deliver your next best action. So that's how you'd use it for cross-sell upsell. And then if we go into the agent performance, so obviously what we're trying to do here is we want to manage agents in the way that we're delivering the strategy. So we want to be seeing agents that are doing, a number of agent-to-agent transfers, putting customers on hold a lot, or we can even tell, obviously with this data, which agents are creating repeat interactions. So obviously we can then focus in on agents that are doing those sorts of things. So again, we've got an agent GM segmentation that could be used. We can see that by different contact centers. We can see it by how many days of the month that each agent is working, so to see the impact of that. We're looking at skill levels. We can understand that level as well. So again, you can do things like, so show me all the agents that have a high level of transfers, that do a high level of putting customers on hold, and have a lot of 2+ interactions. So, straight away you can zoom straight into a selection of agents for training and development type purposes. And certainly if you then have the call recordings again, you've got the ability to deliver 100% agent performance measurement and management, which obviously is quite a significant development from today's approach. And I think that brings us to the end of the demonstration and what we want to do. If we can just look back onto the slides again. Any questions? No, okay. If there's any questions that's popped up is in your brain as you've been listening, then please drop it into the chat box. And then just as we go on back to the delivery, so what's available is if we go to the steps. So if you then have the data, this transactional data, and you like what you've seen and you'd like to have something like this, then we can basically got sort of two main steps that we can get up and running on. Once we've identified the right data we need with you, then basically we can pull together very quickly a view, those dashboards that you've seen. So there's no sort of reporting requirements. We just basically take your data and put it into that view. And then that is like a standalone delivery that you can kind of do quick wins with to sort of show these are the good customers, these are bad customers, these are agents that we can do development with. So really sort of justify the whole activity really. And then once you've gone past that stage, you can then go into an industrialize where we can actually set up the industrialization of the data feeds, make sure the report on it's reporting while people are logged in and using, and just brings the whole thing into kind of a daily view activity so you can use it in anger to deliver transformation in the organization. And again, if you need any support around the transformation side, then again, Differentia is able to help on that, delivering of that as well. So that brings us to the end of the presentation and the demonstration. So we're on to the Q&A bit now. So if there's any questions, then please let us know.
Right, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Rick. We've had a few questions. We'll move on to answer those now. So firstly, could you please go into a bit more detail on what type of ACC data is required?
Certainly. So again, whether you've got depending on your system, so Genesis, Avaya, Cisco, or any of those types of systems, they hold, often they will be held at a very transactional level. Now, sometimes you need different bits of kit to access that transactional data, but assuming you can get hold of that, we have partners that we can access. If you don't have the required technology to get hold of that data, then we have partners that can get hold of that data for you. And then by having that data, then it's ideally, if we've got 1 or 2 months worth of data, it's got 12 months, and that's fabulous. We can deliver a really impressive first delivery very quickly on that. And then, as I say, everything's connected back to the user ID. So any profile marketing data we bring in as well can all just simply connect together very simply using the associative technology that Qlik has within it.
From my point of view, I'd say just bring the data as granular as possible. As soon as you aggregate data, then you lose visibility of the fine detail. Because the Qlik platform can handle huge quantities of data, we don't need to pre-aggregate. Because of the in-memory data model, then you have a coherent view even when the data is connected together in complicated ways.
Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question is, you focus a lot on customer contact centres, and you mentioned this can also be used for retail and online channels. What is the difference in terms of delivery?
Okay, thank you very much. In principle, there's no difference. But if we take retail, for instance, then what we can do there is, depending on the type of technology you've got in store, then that can be, the minimum is obviously make sure each rep has their own sign-in in store. So when a customer interacts with that rep, then that transaction is recorded in back-end systems and we can see that. If you want to pick something up earlier in store, then you probably some sort of queue master system, queuing system, where the customer can put in their account details or identifier of some sort, and then we can pick them up earlier in the queue, and then we can do more work with it. But then by linking the customer service data and the retail data together, then obviously you start to get some very interesting PTC type insights into that propensity to call across those channels and the cause and effect of those interactions. And then online, obviously that's great granular data online, but again, it's making sure that you've got the, obviously if you're logging into my account, then that's pretty straightforward. But it's just making sure that within that web data that you can identify the customer information, the customer ID, so we can link all of that data together and tie it all together. So you'd end up with 3 different dashboards and deliveries, and then one singular dashboard delivery to show you a single engagement of a customer and groups of customers across channels and the implications across that channel experience.
Great, thank you. Well, we've now come to the end of the webinar. Thank you to everyone for joining us, and thank you to Peter and Rick for your presentation. We hope you all found the webinar to be beneficial to you and your organisation. We will follow up with you in the next 10 days, but in the meantime, please do feel free to contact us at info@differentia.co. And that's all. Thanks for joining us.